Are you ready to take your aerial reconnaissance to new heights? Meet Werx, your go-to source for cutting-edge aviation analysis and intelligence updates. It's all happening right on Patreon. With 4 tiers, you get to choose what level suits your needs. From discounts at the workshop to ad-free content, you'll have access to live SITREPs, Q&As, and video archives. Werx Patreon isn't just a subscription. It's a doorway to unparalleled insights, exclusive content only available here, and a strong community of like-minded individuals who share the same passion for intelligence analysis.
Hey folks, Mil-Spec Opsmickey here. Listen, I am thrilled to invite you to our exclusive community over here on Patreon. All right, hey, welcome folks. Mil-Spec Opsmickey here. It's going to be your SITREP at 6/27/2024, coming to you live here from the Monkey Lounge in the great state of Texas. As we get into the deets, did the United States knowingly put an ATACMS onto the beach that had cluster mines, killing quite a few civilians in Crimea? Boy, it sure is looking that way. The video shows cluster mines, and you know, even the recovery, they're finding the remnants of cluster mines, which, if you're not familiar with that, cluster mines they're a big no-no when it comes to a lot of just kind of the rules of engagement with war. And so very, very much frowned upon. And of course, the United States are the ones that drop that into the front line in Ukraine. And then, of course, to utilize this against civilians is, that's a bad thing. And it will probably come back to get us. No two ways about that. So, okay, we start off over here in Skyglass, and I will tell you, we're sitting around 239 currently up. I have stripped out just a metric ton of trainer activity today. It's a beautiful day out. It's hot, but a lot of flying going on. If we look at the H-60s, you'll notice that they are kind of scattered all around the U.S., mainly East Coast centric, but pretty busy. 35 Blackhawks up. And then we go over here. Let's just see who wants to be incognito, and 26 of those. So, but look at the KC-135s. 26 KC-135s currently up. Mix in the B-767 Pegasus, which are 7 of those. And we've got a pretty good number, a little bit above average. I would imagine that the Eastern Seaboard today, later on today, because of the debate, is probably going to be pretty hot in terms of fighter activity, etc. Okay. Now let's do this. I want to jump over to the watch list first and foremost, and point out a couple of things. Notice the amount of intel balloons that are currently up. Intel balloons across the U.S. That's a lot, actually. And that's not showing all of them. That's just some of them. But you can see there's a lot of them. Notice that they parked kind of over the southeast when you got the debate going on in Atlanta. So I'm sure they are doing all of the intel gathering there. And then we've got, looks like some intel bird down south on the left coast. Now, the interesting piece is, let me just see. You'll see we've got B703. It's going to be an air refueler off the East Coast. It's just a different platform. It's a third party. Notice the 2 E2s. Those are also AWACS. So those are off the East Coast. Concerned about something, clearly. And let me see. We get over here to Europe. And just note the E3 Sentries. A lot of G5s up too. But all out towards the forward edge of what will be the eventual battlefield. All right. Now, check this out. I'm going to go back to the Mini, and I want to get down a little lower here because I want you to see this bird right here. Do you see the Cobra 36? That's a nuke sniffer, folks. So we'll look closer at that in just a minute. But for some reason, the nuke sniffer has been residing over the East Coast, down near Trump, right? Isn't that curious? Okay, so we went into the watch list. Now let's just take a gander at the Intel Surveillance and Reconnaissance, or the ISR aircraft. A little lighter than usual, but do note that you've got a lot of activity down in the southeast. You've got it along the southern border, right? It's a little bit outside of Atlanta, but, pretty close. From this aircraft capability standpoint, that's all you need to be is close. Now, let's look at the sniffers for a minute. This is not the R135 sniffer. This will be Department of Energy sniffer and then another third-party sniffer. Just notice that it's kind of cruising along the area that Flashbang resides on the weekends. And then up near Buffalo, again, we've seen that in the past. They seem to be doing some samples down in Buffalo with the Nuke sniffer. Okay, drone activity. Just notice the ones coming out of the DC side of the house, but notice the broken trace as it heads out to the left coast. And then Southern California is pretty busy and active. Some low altitude ones up north in Northern Europe, and then some low altitude down over the Mediterranean. But then we've got the high altitude coming out of Malta. That's probably a Q4. Looking very closely at Israel and, oh yes, you guessed it, Lebanon. So there's definitely some things afoot over in Lebanon up near Beirut. I can guarantee Hezbollah is on the move. That's why we're watching it so closely, because we know this is going to be, a powder keg when it does go off. So, okay, let's talk E6 for a minute. Now, this off the left coast, off the Gulf of Mexico, off of the East Coast. And again, indicator of sub-activity, nuclear sub-activity. And then you'll see this in the area near Norway down towards England. Now that becomes important. Well, why? Well, let's go over here to our mini for a second. And we've been talking. I said, very unusual to see an E6 go across the drink. I can count on one hand that I've seen it happen. But this would be, they call it the Doomsday plane, but it's really not the big 747 Doomsday plane. That's the original. This is it's a Doomsday in terms of it's a command aircraft, right? Command and control, talking to the nukes. But it's interesting is that we've got a U.S. ballistic missile submarine and the Doomsday plane in a rare show of force off Norway. Yeah, we were just talking about that. It's a nice little photo op, isn't it? Yeah, we've been showing you that it was over there. We said this is absolutely what's going on, that's talking to a nuclear sub, and this just confirms it. So, all right. Now, let me do this. Let's move on from that aspect. Let's get over to the AWACS side. Now, this, just notice that it is loitering. It goes almost straight directly over the top of Atlanta. We know why that is, right? To think that they're worried about nukes when there's a debate going on in Atlanta, that tells you everything you need to know, doesn't it? Oh, boy. Okay, and then, of course, you just notice the sea of activity up here off of Norfolk. Very active. Okay, there's a reason for that, too. So, all right, we get over to Europe. Again, this is going to be your AWACS. And, you can see it heads out to that eastern flank near Ukraine border over Poland. Very active, really, over RZE. You can see Belarus to the north of that, Ukraine to the south. And then, of course, very active over France. Well, we've got a lot of things happening. We got Summer Olympics coming up, and so that may be why as well. And then a little blip off Okinawa, and then you can see Australia is pretty active there to the north. Very active to the north. And then, as always, down here to the south, actually to the east, southeast. Okay, let's talk graybeards for a minute, gray birds for a minute. And I basically need to hide that, and let's pop this up. This is important because they've got a new capability, and when we show the graybirds, we're talking really about Phoenix Air, okay? And just notice they're doing a lot of stuff off the danger box area, off the left coast there, down south. And then some strange activity kind of in between Minnesota and Michigan. A little back and forth there. Now, the interesting piece, and this is a big takeaway, remember, the Graybirds are very big agency supporters. And so when you start to see them coming in and out of Malta, headed over to Baku, and the return flight, we saw them go in the other day. We see them coming back out with broken traces. Yeah, they're up to something. Ain't no two ways about it. All right. Okay. Let's talk air refuelers since we were on the subject of just, it gives us kind of a back of the napkin on really how many fighters do we have up at the time. And this is the last 3 days. So it's 212 air refueling flights. You can see over the Sea of Japan, over the Pacific side, get down to Australia, don't see anything at all. But just notice there is a repetitive pattern over the North Sea, over the forward or the eastern flank from Poland up to the north. And that's probably because we put fighters all over the place there. And then you'll see some transitions down towards Malta and then into the Middle East, broken trace into the Middle East. Okay. Pretty active. And then we get over to the U.S. and it's just crazy as you would expect and very elevated in terms of probably fighter activity. Okay. Off the eastern seaboard, very, 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 very busy. Down to the southern border, a lot of transitions over to Hawaii, right? Maybe some F-22s on the move. Okay, now let's take a look as we talk. Let's go to the Ruskies for a minute. And the only piece that I see that other than I see a long flank that kind of goes around the country there. But notice this down into Saudi Arabia. Yeah, the Ruskies are playing very well with the Saudis. And then off of the shoreline of Israel over the Mediterranean. So pretty active. Now, let's go look at C-17 traffic. All right. Just notice off the left coast, a lot of stuff going in and out of Hawaii. We see that very frequently, and most of that is because they are, it's an island, so they've got to get their supply somehow. It's either by boat or C-17 to the military base. And then you can see down into South America, up near Aruba. Yeah. C-17 activity into Panama and then up and down the East Coast. It is a little lighter than what we have seen, but you will notice that there is still, it's a pretty solid little spaghetti line in and out of Ramstein, Germany. So that seems to be the main hub. And then, of course, over into Portugal near the Rock of Gibraltar area, right there, little pinch point. And notice the broken traces down into Africa. That will come up here in just a minute because we're going to talk a little bit more about Africa. What could the United States be doing down there? We already know they're sharing base operations with the Ruskies down in Niger. So, yeah, pretty active. All right, C-17s. Okay, now let's talk Omni for a minute. It is a little thinner than we normally see from the Omni perspective. Remember, this is a conglomerate, so it's more than just Omni. But these are the folks that picked up for the Swift Air. They've served many masters for a very long time. But this looks like we've got a fair amount of troop movement into Europe, all the way up towards Norway, Denmark, down south into Italy, into Spain. Notice the flight, little round robin there in and out of Egypt near Gaza. That is probably picking up plane loads of migrants. Then we get to the United States. Very busy. Notice the flurry going in and out of Hawaii. A lot of flight activity in Hawaii, all up and down the left coast. And then look into Mexico, down into Central America, Panama, down into South America, into the Caribbean. That is more than likely moving migrants, okay, illegals. And then you can see a little bit of movement there out of Japan down to Malaysia. All right. Let's get over here to the mini. Let's look at flashbangs scheduled for today. I am personally not going to watch the debate tonight. I just don't know that I can stomach it. It's, you know, one side's going to just be lying through their nose, and the media is going to be probably trying to do their best to contain Trump because he will certainly have the opportunity to fillet a very fading Biden. Now, Could this be the moment that in public display where Biden has his slip of the mind, so to speak, and maybe brings to the attention that he's not really a good candidate for maybe that office in the next term? Could be totally intentional. Wait and see what happens. But nonetheless, he is up at Camp David. And from there, we get over here, you can see he's still there. That's red because it's active. He's headed down to Atlanta this evening to the debate. And then there's something going on up here in North Carolina, but then it looks like he's headed back to the beach after all that is said and done. So, okay, now let's move on. Check this out. This is a very troubling report, but it's not a surprise to any of us. So they say 400 illegal immigrants smuggled into the U.S. by ISIS-linked effort. And they have managed to arrest about 150 of them. But there's still 50, they say, that they don't know where they are. They've disappeared on them, gone dark. They're looking for them diligently because they are very worried about that. Now, look, at the end of the day, this is a drop in the bucket. If you look at how many Hezbollah and cartel and all the other folks that come across, it's in probably the tens of thousands, especially the Chinese. So nonetheless, these are people, all of them, that do not like us. And, oh, by the way, the blood is on the hands of the current administration because they knowingly interviewed them and released them into our country. All right, here's your NOTAM for today. You can see just a couple little things here and there. The U.S. looks to be very active in terms of boxes. Remember, the red ones are hot boxes, so to speak. Orange ones are either long, ongoing, or up and coming exercises, etc. These danger boxes tend to flex on the East Coast. Same thing out here. In fact, there was a weather box out here yesterday evening. And then let me go down here to Malaysia. I want to see if this is still here. Yes. Let's see. Is it this one or is it the other one? That's a mill exercise. Now let's open this up. And what does it say? Well, it says reservation for weather modification technology flight will take place over this area. So, yeah, they're doing it all over the world, folks. It's not just over Texas or over North Dakota. It is all over the world. And so it just puts everything out of balance. It really does, to say the least. All right. Now, I did see a missile box down here to the south. That would be this one right here. Probably tied to Starlink. If I had to guess, rocket launch will take place. Government of the United States of America, hazardous will be conducted for atmospheric re-entry splashdown of the Falcon 9 Starlink. All right. There you have it. All right, let's move on. This can be your cyber map for today. Give that a second to marinate. Given what has just happened with the cluster munitions on the beach in Crimea, this cyber attack is probably going to be one of the higher type of things that would happen directly to the United States. So if you see stuff go offline, get knocked off for a while, hospital systems, whatever it may be, that's typically what happens. But you can see it is lit up like a Christmas tree over here, and everything seems to be hot and heavy into the United States, as always. Okay, over to Dover, and just the big takeaway is you can see the Atlas Airs coming inbound and then leaving, headed to Ramstein, headed to RZ, Poland. More than likely, he's taking M1 Abrams or Patriot missile systems. Okay. All right, moving over here to the Brits. Just notice out here off the coast of Africa. All right. And in and out of Cyprus, very hot and heavy into Europe. But that's a lot of flights by the Brits. So they seem to be very active and on the move today. And then we get over to the Camber. The U.S. Transportation Command says the equivalent to the Brits. And you'll just notice in and out of the Middle East, in and out of Europe. And one looks to be headed across the drink from the left coast, Travis Air Force Base. All right, let's move on. All right, this is going to be Ramstein, and just notice you got them coming inbound from Baltimore, not just Dover, right? And then another Camber flight right here coming in. 767-300. A couple of reach flights, so C-17 activity it looks to be. And again, these smaller, when you see I say narrow body, B767 is really not it's considered a wide body aircraft. But when it comes to cargo, really not the same footprint as a 747. Carries a lot more. You can get a lot of things in here. These are typically going to be troop movers for the most part. So you can see them departing from there, and it doesn't really say where they're headed. But anyway, it looks like a Navy P-8 maybe with all the zeros. They're headed out to Crete. All right, we'll move on. This is going to be RZE Poland. This is forward operating base. Again, this is Ukraine over here. But if we get down into the deets, you can see I've got base commanders coming in, German Air Force inbound, a couple of U.S. camber flights coming in, large 747s. And then you can see them departing from there. One headed down to Sofia, that's in Bulgaria. And that one's headed up to Poznan. Not really sure. That doesn't look like, that may be, that's an Antonov. No, sorry, that is not. It's an Airbus 320 Neo. So that's a commercial. And then with German Air Force, the Brits. So a little active for RZE. Okay, little news for you here. Denmark to conclude a local F-16 training in terms of the Ukrainian pilots. They're wrapping it up. They said they've chosen to just stop the training because they're getting ready for F-35s. They've got them coming inbound, and they're going to be converting the base from F-16s, their older jets, over to F-35s. And so they won't be doing any more training of the Ukrainian F-16 pilots after this year. Okay, so it looks like they are kind of wrapping it up. There's also an F-16 school in Tucson, Arizona, but that can only accommodate 12 additional trainees. So this is interesting. I don't think we'll see F-16s enter the theater by the Ukrainians now. NATO U.S. forces, absolutely. But I think we're still got a little bit of time before this happens, just because, like I've said before, you don't just throw them into the seat of an F-16. These things are very responsive jets, a lot different than anything that they've probably flown. Even the Soviet-based stuff or the old Russian fighters are not a match for the F-16s, all right? And certainly not a match for F-22s or F-35s. So, okay, U.S. is expanding bioweapon research in Africa. Okay, this is a big data point for you because they are now saying, Moscow's now claiming they have proof that these activities have moved over to Africa. Keep in mind that the Russians have a very big presence, especially with the Wagner Group in Africa. But remember, there was all kinds of mud throwing, saying it was all fake news when it came to these labs inside Ukraine. Later, it was found that they actually were there. In fact, there was a certain individual that was tied to other things during the Trump era. Hopefully we have another one. But yeah, they denied it. And then the Russians came out, and then we actually had a map of all the locations. And so that's the first piece of it. But guess what? Because they've been forced out by the Russians, it says because Russia has managed to halt the implementation of the biological warfare programs in Ukraine, the Pentagon is forced to transfer their incomplete research under these projects to other regions, and they believe it is now in Africa. All right. So that is a data point for you, but should not surprise us when we see all of the flight stuff going in and out of Africa now. All right. Okay. Now, this is the other piece. And yes, I will point out this is the Russian Times. Okay. But it is no different than any of the U.S. Heavily leaning left media sources from the mainstream. So it's no different than CNN or even Fox for that matter. Okay. Check this out, though. They're saying that they have found the cluster munitions. So, you know, the smoking gun. Now, there is an image down here. I'm not going to show it because it's considered graphic and, you know, it'll get us dinged. So, but I'm just going to mouse over it so you can see all the little smoke stuff popping where the cluster munitions hit off the shore, but then it also hit on the shore. And they're saying, hey, we've got now not only a video, but we've got actually remnants of it. So there will be a level of accountability for this. No two ways about it. Cluster munitions is considered really taboo when it comes to NATO and all the other treaties that are out there. Okay. So there's that aspect. Now, let me jump over here. I do want to show you what the latest is. Russians, we mentioned in the last SITREP that they have kicked off their little summer initiative or operation or whatever you want to call it. But they launched today, and this is kind of interesting. But you're going to see that the Ukrainian air defense system, so it'll be the Patriot systems that we are pushing in like shifting everything we have from other European countries, maybe even Israel, all into Ukraine. We talked about that in the last SITREP as well. But they're saying that they shot down 23 drones, 4 caliber cruise missiles, and a couple other KH-59, 69 missiles. So interesting piece. Those caliber missiles are actually the same ones, the cruise missiles that'll launch out of a Club K missile system if they were loaded with those. And they can be conventional, biological, chemical, and nuclear. So, all right. Back over here to the Mini. But yeah, it looks like we got the smoking gun. They've actually collected proof that it was cluster munitions that killed. Keep in mind, it killed children and a lot of beachgoers. So, a highly populated beach. Okay, Omni. Just noticed they're coming out of Baltimore, Washington, and a Trip 7 headed to Shannon. That's going to be Troop more than likely. And then, of course, National Cargo, as we just kind of get into the deets of where these guys are. Just notice in and out of the Middle East. And it looks like they're flying over. So this one from Anderson to Ellsworth Air Force Base. So that one's coming out of here. Probably this one right here coming back. More than likely, that's a good indicator that we had bombers out here that came out of Ellsworth. And that was more than likely flight crew and because the 747 could have just been the things that they need to support a deployment with bombers, right? Spare inventories, etc. So, okay, listen, that is going to do it for our SITREP today. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your Thursday and have a great weekend. We will see those in the Q&A over here in just a minute. So you guys hang tight. Definitely time to stay frosty. And keep that powder dry. So we'll talk soon. God bless. Monkey out.
In the heat of the moment, precision and excellence are paramount. It's a creed we live by, both in service and beyond. Our beans are sourced from the finest regions, roasted with perfection, and packed with care. Whether you prefer whole beans or ground coffee, Operator Espresso delivers a cup that's unmatched. Whether you're sharing stories with fellow veterans or gearing up for a demanding day, Operator Espresso is there to fuel your mission. Operator Espresso is more than just coffee. It's a tribute to excellence. Join us in our mission. Experience the difference. Taste the honor.